In case you're wondering why I'm wearing this lovely red Hawaiian shirt, well, today is the 12th of February 2021 and it is Chinese New Year, the year of the ox, and I will say to all my Cantonese Chinese friends, Kung Hei Fat Choi, meaning wishing you prosperity and good luck. So let me continue. I'm going to do the number 2 project of the beginner's DIY bonsai. So what have I got here? You will all know by now that these are the small Christmas trees. These Christmas trees are, I would say, at least 3 years old, and they are, let's see, about 8 inches tall. That's from the top of the soil, 8 inches tall. So they're not youngsters really, they're quite large. And I can see in the soil that's beautiful mycelium in there. And okay, let me just show you what I'm going to do. With all my do-it-yourself projects, I'm going to work on 2 specimens so that we have 2 different styles. Although in the kit you will get one tree, one pot, enough wire and enough soil to make the bonsai. So, to reinforce what some of you who are regular YouTube viewers will know, that I begin always by removing some of the compost from the top of the pot, because there's always a lot of root below there, and just by doing that, look at it, I've produced 1.5 inches of additional root. Can you see? So you can see the trunk. So that's always the first thing you need to do. So there you are. And I'm now going to proceed by thinning the tree a little bit so that you can see some of the branches. I'm going to thin out the branches and then proceed to wire them up. So going on from here, I will just go and find my trusty secateurs, because I don't want to use the bonsai tools. Remember, I said I'm only going to use secateurs throughout these demonstrations. This lovely shirt, by the way, is a gift that one of my YouTube fans has gifted me, and you can see it's a lovely red, I don't know whether it's silk or what, but it's a beautiful shirt. It's got traditional herons and pine branches. How appropriate. And I'm wearing this, although it's cold outside, it's full of snow outside, but I'm in the comfort of my office here. I don't often work from inside the office, but since the staff are not here, I take the liberty of creating a mess. I hope those of you who work from home don't create this mess. So I'm going to wire these 2 branches outwards like that. I just realized that wearing this red shirt is not the best thing, because if I stand behind the tree, you can't see it. So I have to move away so that you can see behind the wall what I've got there. Now, the next thing to do is to wire the branches. With these young Albertus spruce, as I said, this is 8 inches tall, maybe even 9 inches tall. And the trunk is thicker than a biro. But I'm not going to wire this into an S shape. I'll do the next one into an S. I'm just going to do this as a formal upright, which is a Christmas tree shape. So the thinnest wire I have here, I have a selection of 1.5. So I will use the 1 millimeter wire, which is the thinnest wire. Remember, you've always got to use the correct gauge of wire. If you use a gauge which is too thick, not only is it wasteful, it can be a bit overpowering, and it can also damage the branch that you're going to wire. So I'll just begin reminding my viewers, if you are just coming fresh to this particular video, I hope that if there's anything I have taught you, it is to use the 2 branch principle. That means you're wiring 2 branches with a single piece of wire. I'm self-videoing. I don't have the pleasure of having someone stand in front and videoing, but I think it will work. I can't get detailed shots. I won't do any cutting yet. I'm just going to wire them, choose the branches, wire them, and see how it goes before I cut any of the branches. So I'm now looking for the next branch to wire flat. I also need some back branches, so this is a back branch. I've got back branch and a side branch. I know that working with the secateurs is not as convenient as working with my bonsai scissors, but all is possible. All is possible. You don't need it. So I have two branches here, which I'm going to do. So I'm still cutting with my secateurs, because this Felco secateur has got a little notch, and the notch enables me to cut wire with it. Okay. So I found the next pair of branches. We always talk about pairs of branches. Don't try and wire a single branch on its own. It's not impossible, but it's not a good practice. The Piceas or spruces, they have a lovely fragrance, and I can just smell the fragrance. Now, this particular tree, you will find that quite a few of these Piceas, you will get the same situation. There's another very strong upward shoot, which we call the second leader. I stopped to move the camera because I want to show you a much closer view of what I'm doing. So, the second leader is this one. This is the main leading shoot, and this is the second leading shoot. Now, I don't want two leaders if I can help it. Most beginners get confused with the second leader. So, if the second leader is going to confuse you, I suggest we will cut it off. So that's what I'm going to cut off. And I'm going to leave just a single leader going to the top. It hasn't affected the tree. Straight away, it's beginning to look like a proper large tree. Now, when I try and choose the next branch, I always put it down in position to see if it creates enough space between this one and the next one. So let's try that. Okay, I've got two branches there. Let's wire those two. Always select two branches and wire it. If it doesn't look right, you can always use another one. But these two seem to work. I think this closer view, I should have started off with that. You get a much better picture. Good. There you go. So that's how the tree is looking. So you remember when I started, it was just looking like that. Can you see the difference already? Just by wiring the branches, the whole thing looks different. They are beginning to look like large trees. Now the next pair of branches we will choose. And now this one is too close. I'm going to take that off. The next pair I'm going to take so that I have space between branches. So we wire those two. Still sticking to the 1 millimeter wire. Two branch principle. Sometimes you can wrap the wire around the trunk to give the wire stability, and then wire it out to the branches. So all I'm doing is making horizontal branches as I proceed up the tree. Because the branches are getting shorter, the length of the wire that I'm cutting is also getting shorter, so I don't need to keep using same long pieces. the bonsai terminology for trees that are straight, upright, is called a formal upright. These are all bonsai terms. I'm not a great lover of using bonsai terms because they were invented just to describe certain styles that the Japanese in particular use for their bonsai, but they're just ways to describe a particular shape of tree. You don't have to use those styles. I think I've more or less got to the top. There's a little more there. I'll just wire two more. See, these two can be wired outwards to make them horizontal. And that will be it. Sometimes the very fine ones don't need to be wired. Let them grow a little bigger before you wire it. And then when we come to the top, I've got to keep looking from the front. As I say, it's very hard to work from the back of the tree all the time. I know that some of you criticize me and say that, you know, why don't you work behind like I'm doing now? But that's not the way I'm looking at a tree. I'm always looking from the front. Okay, I don't need it all that tall, so I will just cut a bit of the top off. Always cutting the top stops the tree growing more and more. Now, I can thin the tree so that it's not so wide. So what I do is I just cut with the secateurs, cut the tips off to reduce the width of the tree. I have to keep looking at the tree myself to see how it looks. There you are. So, such a simple tree, and I think it looks nice from every side. So, let me show you what an unmade tree looks like. This is it without any wiring, and this is it with wiring. So there is a difference. And as I said, these kits will come with a little plastic pot, enough wire to wire the tree, and all you do, usually the original soil is enough to pot it up, but we will give you a little more soil as well. So again, to show you that what you've seen is not a fluke. There is no sleight of hand, no magic tricks. And that is a very simple upright bonsai that I've made from one of these bushy little plants. So that is what we call an upright style bonsai that you can make. And I always say that it is so simple. I've taken my time to show it to you slowly. The object is not to be fast, but if you can work fast, that's okay. But if you work slow, that's also okay. Now, this other one, let's see what we can do with this one. The other popular shape in bonsai is always that S shape. The S shape, again, the technical term in bonsai is the informal upright. Informal upright meaning it's not upright, but we are going to just make it into an S. Most plants can be wired into an S if the trunk is bendable. Mind you, if you use a trunk which is thicker than your thumb, I'm not saying it's impossible to bend, but it becomes difficult to bend. So I can see that this can be bent. But to bend the trunk, you used to use, let's see, this is what, thicker than a biro, and using the 1 millimeter wire, that's not going to wire the trunk for bending purposes. So if you want to do the S shape, I would recommend using the 2.5 millimeter wire, much thicker. 2.5 millimeter wire. Remember what I said? The most popular grades of wire is 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, maybe 3 and 3.5 as well. But usually with those grades, 2 is by far the most commonly used size of wire for most people's bonsai. Okay, I'm trying to avoid trapping the little branches. Although it's such a bushy tree, there's always danger of trapping it. There you are, I'm just going around, up the trunk. Keep the wire tight. Don't wire it so that the coils are very far apart, and don't wire it too close together. If I can just show you, maybe let me get a biro or a pen and show you. This is a ballpoint pen, and let me show you using 1 millimeter wire. The best way to wire, let me put this tree aside, is what we call the 45-degree slope, like so. That is ideal wiring. Some people wire very far apart. They will do it like that, so wide apart. That is not going to be effective if it is so wide apart. At the other extreme, I've also seen people wrap the wire so tight that it's almost like the coil of a spring. Can you see? That is not very good wiring. You see, it's too close. So that is not good wiring. So I think this is the first time I've shown it in such close detail. So let me recap. The ideal spacing, depending on the thickness of the branch, is such that the slope of the wire is like 45 degree. So that's what we call 45-degree wiring. And this is the ideal type of wiring, like so. So I hope that gives you a good idea as what you should be aiming for. So that is basic wiring in a nutshell. Now let's return to that other tree. May I just remind you that this is what we did, the upright tree, but I'm going to do an S shape, or the informal upright. So again, to remind those of you who are fairly new to bonsai and have not watched my earlier videos, the S shape or informal upright shape without cutting the wire is like that. That's the trunk shape that I want to create on that Picea. Also, we need to emphasize that the S shape is not just what we call a flat S in one plane. It's a flat S in all dimensions, 3 dimensions. So to create that 3-dimensional S, I literally make a coil. I always like the analogy of stirring a pot. I'm literally stirring a pot. Like that, I'm going to just twist the wire so it is like the coil of a spring. See, that's a coil of a spring. And that is the S that I'm trying to create. All right? So, having already put the wire around that trunk, I can now proceed to make the S shape. Can you see the wire around the trunk? So I'm now going to literally do that action, stirring action, like so. Can you see the S shape I've created? Like that. Okay, now you can't appreciate the S until and unless I prop it up in a pot so that you can appreciate the angle better. Let me just get a little pot to hold it up. I don't know whether that gives you a better idea. Can you see the S shape of the tree now? And this is such a bushy tree. It's nice to have a lot of branches, but sometimes if there are too many branches, it becomes very confusing. So, again, I've got to work from the back because I can't work, from the back and look at the tree. So what I'm doing here, I'm going to cut some off, too many branches. I'm just going to thin the branches a little bit so that you can see the S shape better. Can you see the S shape now? Can you see the S shape here? So that's the S shape coming along. So those lower branches I can select and use as my first branch. There are 3 branches here. I will keep those 3 branches because it's a very commonly encountered principle or problem, in fact, because I keep telling you to wire 2 branches together, but if there are 3 branches, what do? I will just wire the first 2 that is available, and then the third one I'll explain to you what I do. Now to wire those branches, I will go back to the 1 mil wire because I think the 1 millimeter wire should hold. If not, I can always use 1.5. These Piceas are nice plants to use because they have so many branches. As with all these bonsai projects where we have to wire branches, the more branches you have, the more options there are. If there are few branches, then the options are very much reduced. And if you have few options, then you can't make many choices. I hope that makes sense, okay? Now, although we said that it's nice to have a lot of options, you then have to decide which of those extra branches you need to cut. I'm not going to cut them all, I'm just going to shorten them a little bit. Shorten it so that you can see the trunk better. So I've shortened that branch out. Now the one I've wired is this one. I'm going to shorten that one. So you can see those 2 branches have been wired out to that side. Can you see? That's wired out there. You can see the S shape as well, how it's coming along. And then I've got the 3rd branch at the back. So what do I do with the 3rd branch? I will now wire the 3rd branch to one of the branches that have already been wired. But I've discovered that on the main branch there's a little side branch. So, okay, it solved the problem. So I've got another pair. Although it's not a main branch, it's a subsidiary branch of the main branch. So, okay, we can do that. So there are always choices. The message which I'm trying to pass on is that wherever you get branches, try and find a pair. If you can't find a pair, you can link it to an existing wired branch which will form the 2nd branch for you to wire. So that is how we execute the 2-branch principle. Still a bit confusing because you're looking at it flat on a camera. If it is 3 dimensions, so if you were looking at it live, you get a much better idea. Let me bring it close and show you. You can see the S shape of the tree, and you can see the lower branches that are wired. Okay, there are so many branches that I don't want to clutter the trunk with branches. I want to have space between the branches. So the next 2 branches will be branches that can be wired together without hiding the trunk. So I should be able to see the trunk after wiring. I'm trying to speak very slowly so that you can understand what I'm trying to explain. These simple bonsais are really to encourage beginners to make credible bonsai and to enjoy the hobby. I always understand how beginners feel in anything. I remember when I was learning to swim, I learned to swim when I was quite old, and it was very frightening. But when it is shown in a way that is user-friendly, the fear of doing it is removed. And that is what I'm trying to do with my bonsai classes here. I'm just trying to show you how easy it is to do bonsai. Okay, some people may laugh at what I'm teaching, but I don't mind. You can laugh as much as you like, but there are people who need encouragement, and I'm here to teach it via this channel. Okay, wiring literally all the branches. There's still another little pair there, so that pair is only in need of a piece of wire about 3 inches long. Always go around the trunk once to stabilize the wire if you wish, and then go out to the branch. And then right at the top, because I don't want the tree to keep growing taller and taller. If you want a taller tree, then please let it grow. But generally, I prefer to keep it short. Okay, so I've done the wiring. And because this is a relatively small tree that has come out, I can now tease the roots. Where's my little, I have a little rake. Now, although this is a bonsai rake, I remember that when I used to attend clubs, and club people are very frugal, and they devise all sorts of methods, old dinner forks and all that. If it works for you and you don't want to spend a lot of money and you only have a few trees, by all means use it, nothing wrong with it. But if you have the real thing, so much the better. But it doesn't mean that if you don't have it, you can't achieve it. And I'm putting it at a slight slant. You see the trunk is coming at a slant, at a 45-degree slant. There's a bit of root sticking out, but because there's such a lot of roots on this tree, I can cut some of this off as well. This is the smallest size pot that we sell, this little plastic pot. I'm looking at it from the front now, and you're looking at the back. And I just fill the soil up in the pot. You notice I didn't cut any root because the root ball fits that pot. So if it fits the pot, don't cut it. So there you are. There is your informal upright spruce. So you don't always have to make them straight. but you also don't always have to make it that curly shape. So from the same tree, I've got completely different images. So there you go. This is doing 2 trees. The kit, which are going to be supplied if you should you wish to buy, you don't have to buy them, will be 1 tree, 1 pot and bits of wire and a tiny bit of soil. So you can either produce upright tree like this, or you can produce an S-shaped tree like that. So how simple is that? These are simple Alberta spruce, what we call the Christmas trees, made into a credible bonsai. So there is your lesson number 2, and then the next one will be our lesson number 3.